Namibia joins the rest of the world in observing the International Day of Persons with Disabilities on the 3rd of December 2022, which was proclaimed in 1992 by the United Nations General Assembly's Resolution 42.3, where the observance of the day aims to promote an understanding of disability issues and mobilize support for the dignity, rights, and well-being of persons with disabilities. Good afternoon and welcome to today's discussion looking at the observation or the observance of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. With me, Asteria Njenja, and I'm joined by a panel of experts who will help us unpack the topic and answer a few questions that we have prepared. And thereafter, you, our viewer and listener, will also be given a chance to call in and ask your questions or give your suggestions to today's topic and be part of the conversation here at the Government Information Center. But before we do that, I would like to give the platform to our Honorable Minister of ICT and Dr. Pea Mushelenga to give us the cabinet briefing.
Good evening, viewers and listeners, or rather good afternoon. I'm going to present the decisions taken at the 21st session of the cabinet on the 29th of November 2022. First decision. Provision of medical oxygen to public health facilities. Cabinet took note of the progress made to supply reliable medical oxygen to public health facilities around the country. Cabinet took note of the approach taken to procure pressure swing absorption plants in order to ensure stable and reliable supply of medical oxygen to public health facilities around the country. Cabinet supported the Ministry of Health and Social Services to proceed with the procurement of PSA plants for the public health facilities, subject to provisions of the Public Procurement Act number 15 of 2015. Second decision, report on laws that impede and or retard development in Namibia, that is Access to Housing and Urban Land, commissioned and published by the Law Reform and Development Commission. Cabinet approved in principle the commissioning and publication of report on laws that impede and or retard development in Namibia. Cabinet approved in principle the above mentioned report and its recommendations and directed the high-level technical committee comprising the Secretary to Cabinet as a convener and the executive directors and accounting officers of the Ministries of Urban and Rural Development, Agriculture, Water and Land Reform, Justice, Work and Transport, Office of the Attorney General, and the National Housing Enterprise to streamline the recommendations contained in the report and develop an action plan of the proposed interventions with timelines, and present the action plan for consideration of the Housing Policy Review Workshop scheduled for the 6th to the 7th December 2022 before submitting a comprehensive report to Cabinet. Third decision. Cabinet approved the report on the review and administrative justice in Namibia as commissioned and published by the Law Reform and Development Commission. Cabinet approved the adoption and implementation of the recommendations of the report on the review of administrative justice in Namibia. And Cabinet authorized the Ministry of Justice to commence with the next step in the lawmaking process. Fourth decision. Submission of the Namibia's third, fourth, and fifth periodic reports on the African Charter of the Rights and Welfare of the Child, pursuant to Article 43 of the reporting guidelines of the African Charter of the Rights and Welfare of the Child. Cabinet granted approval in principle to the Ministry of Gender, Equality, Poverty and Eradication and Social Welfare to submit the third, fourth, and fifth periodic reports on the African Charter of the Rights and Welfare of the Child to the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. Fifth decision. Total allowable catch for the deep sea red crab for the 2023 fishing season starting from the 1st of January 2023 up to the 31st of December 2023. Cabinet endorsed the total allowable catch for the deep sea red crab to be set at 4,200 metric tons for the 2023 fishing season. Sixth decision. Total allowable catch for the horse mackerel for the 2023 fishing season starting on the 1st of January to the 31st of December 2023. Cabinet endorsed that the total allowable catch for that season for the horse mackerel be set at 290,000 metric tons. And the seventh decision, 2021 to 2022 annual report for the Namibia Financial Institutions Supervisory Authority, NAMFISA. Cabinet took note of the annual report for the NAMFISA and authorized the Minister of Finance and Acting Minister of Public Enterprise to table the report in the National Assembly. Eighth decision, resubmission of the Ombudsman Bill 2022. Cabinet approved in principle the Ombudsman Bill 2022 pursuant to the recommendations of the Cabinet Committee on Legislation and directed the Minister of Justice to table the bill in the National Assembly once certified by the Attorney General and legal drafters. Here ends Cabinet briefings, and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Pea Mushelenga, for the Cabinet briefing. If you have just joined us, thank you for joining the discussion and thank you for being part of the discussion. Today we are looking at the commemoration of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And joining me in the studio, I'm introducing right from my immediate left, is Ms. Mwaka Mutenda. She is the Human Rights Project Manager at the Namibian Federation of the Visually Impaired. Right next to her is a gentleman, Mr. Dion Baisako, Secretary General, Namibian Mental Health Association. And last but not least is Ms. Mercy Kaimbi Kufuna, Deputy Director, Disability Affairs, Ministry of Gender Equality, Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My first question I would like to pose to Ms. Mutenda. Well, in 1997, actually, yes, the government implemented the National Disability Policy and in 2000 enacted the National Disability Council Act 2004, Act number 26. The presence of these documents is an affirmation or confirmation that the government's political will to provide the required policy, institutional and legal frameworks that will actually enhance the lives of persons or people with disabilities in Namibia. In your opinion, are the current legislations and policies inclusive of the rights of persons with disabilities?
Thank you very much for the question. The UNCRPD, United Nations Convention for Persons with Disabilities, as Namibia is one of the countries which ratified, is inclusive in terms of what it contains, the information it contains. And when it comes to the National Disability Council Act, it is under amendment simply because it was not that comprehensive when it comes to the needs of people with disabilities. So it is yet to be finalized. What I'm trying to say is that the Ministry of Gender, through the Disability Affairs Department, together with our monitoring agency, which is the National Disability Council, requested organizations of people with disabilities to provide information with reference to the National Disability Act. And this information, which was submitted from all OPDs, was incorporated, and now the document is under review. Yeah, and it will be soon finalized. But now when it comes to implementation, I would say what is written in the document is quite pleasing, but the implementation itself, the implementation itself is not really satisfactory, simply because we still have a long way to go. Yeah, if I can speak in the context of education, employment, health, there's still a lot to be done, simply because if you look at the infrastructure, at the buildings, especially in Windhoek, most of the buildings are not accessible to people on wheelchair users, and visually impaired persons. So if I have to put it in percentage, there's probably 10% of the buildings are accessible. Yeah, so, and in terms of education, we still have a lot of people with disabilities who are struggling academically, simply because they cannot access information, like for visually impaired people. Like I said, the schools are inaccessible. So those are some of the reasons why I feel that they are not that inclusive.
Thank you so much. Before I pose the question to Ms. Kufuna to actually look at the inclusivity when it comes to the policies and legislations, I want to ask you a personal question. Actually, when you have spoken of infrastructure and the accessibility to these buildings. When you came to the GIC now, we are on the second floor. How was your experience accessing the Government Information Center with the help from Ms. Baisako? Mr. Sorry.
Mr. Baisako.
Yes.
Okay, if on the ground floor, I think there are a little bit of bumps which need to be leveled. I think Mr. Baisako can bear with me on that. So it's a little bit difficult for a visually impaired person to walk freely. Yeah, okay, there is an elevator, but it does not, it is not accommodative when it comes to people with disabilities, especially visually impaired people, because it does not have that software that speaks when you get to a certain floor. And it also does not have the tactile, which is now the braille buttons. So those are some of the issues that we need to address in Namibia as a country.
Great, thank you so much. Ms. Kufuna, Ms. Mutenda have actually said so much about the frameworks and legal frameworks we have and policies we have in place, and how not so inclusive. We have good documents, but not so inclusive when it comes to people living with disabilities. How often are these legal frameworks actually reviewed so that we accommodate the current issues that people with disabilities are experiencing?
Thank you very much for the question. I think you, in your introduction, you just alluded to the fact that the policy we have was 1997. That was way beyond Namibia ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. And then we then came with an act, or the National Disability Council Act of 26 of 2006. What is interesting is that the policy is quite outdated, because it touches on organizational structure in terms of ministries almost, so it's supposed to be aligned. However, what is for me a standout into our monitoring framework, which is the National Disability Act, it talks about the majority must be persons with disability. So if we have a board, for example, which is not an example, the practical case of the act, if there are to be 13 members, majority must be persons with disability. So the decision making is left with persons with disability themselves. So inclusivity also begins with letting those that have disability be part of the decision making. But however, it's not about only policies that pertains to disability, because persons with disability have to access all the other services. That, like she said, access to health, access to education. Education has also responded very well. We've got an inclusive policy on education. It comes a long way. Yes, we acknowledge much has been done in all these policies, but a lot need to be done. But I think what is also important for the public to know is that as a country, we have been recognized as doing well in terms of mainstreaming disability. And as such, in 2007, we received an ambassador award from an institution. That was to acknowledge that even though Namibia still has a long way to go, there is something that the SADC country appreciate, that is, we have a good legal framework. What is important, I think, is for us collectively now to see how do we bridge the gap between policy and implementation.
Exactly.
Yes, and I think we all are going to that direction.
Okay.
So what is also important is that in terms of legal framework, we must not forget the role that the Employment Equity Act plays, because persons with disability are also a designated group in that act. That means they are supposed, like women and other group, you know, benefit to employment using affirmative.
Okay.
So like she alluded, the policies are there. And if we have ratified the convention, I think the most important stage that we are, as Ms. Mutenda said, is to align our policies and act to the convention, to make sure that they are responsive to the current need.
Okay.
Because just like any other, disability has been revolving. We have started with a different model. At some point, years ago, people talked about the charity model. We went to medical model, but now we are saying disability is about human rights. So when a person with disability is to access a service, it's their right. So that's the stage at which we are. So that needs an alignment, not only in policies, in attitude, in implementation, in decision making, in involving persons with disability at the decision making process, so that us as government, we are quite informed, which we do, and I think you see a representation here. We respect the slogan, nothing about us without us. So collectively, ourselves and the organizations, I think we are able to drive the policies to where we desire them to be.
Okay, that's quite progress you are giving there. But apart from the policies that we have and good legislations, and you have spoken that people with disabilities are also forming part of the decision-making processes. Is there anything that compels us as decision makers or policy makers to actually own up to the gaps that are there, or anything that is disadvantaging the people with disabilities, or anything that actually make us be held accountable for having a good policy that actually says this and that about people with disabilities, but then on the ground or implementation, nothing is actually happening?
Yeah. I think I mentioned the affirmative. There are implications when you don't implement. And with the UNCRPD, it requires persons with disability, when they feel discriminated, to bring that on the table.
Okay.
Yeah, the law makes provision. And I think as government, there is the Office of the Attorney General's Office. In any way, if persons with disability feel they are discriminated in terms of access to health, access to education, it must be brought to government attention through the Office of the Ombudsman. And it can be dealt with so that we set the tone. So our government policies, especially acts, are not just put there. When you do not comply, there are penalties to lack of compliance. Yeah, but we saying, I said it from a perspective to say, we no more see ourselves to say there's government, there's organization. Yeah. We feel we are collective. Yeah, and whatever we need to realize together. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baisako, what are the main issues that have been brought to the forefront? I think Ms. Mutenda has mentioned some that are still affecting the people with disabilities in terms of the features of inclusion, that is access to improved facilities for their benefit, participation in every aspect of life to the best of their abilities, and support from the relevant authorities or bodies or organization in any form.
Thank you. But allow me to wish all the HIV patients a very good World AIDS Day and good health. The activists' courage, families, friends, and relatives' strength, and health fraternity wisdom is a very significant day if we are all not affected. We are all affected if not infected. So let us commemorate this day while we are reflecting to the departed ones. Coming back to your question, access to improved facilities for our benefits. Technology plays a role. And the first question we might ask ourselves is, are we as persons with disabilities involved in the VTC, in the education setup, where technology started? Are we there? Are we representing ourselves there for innovation? Or what my colleague was sharing here, the architecture of this building, the elevator comes from technology. And if we ourselves are not there as architects, sometimes maybe we will always be behind. But I'm very happy within the current infrastructure. If you look at the robots in town, you can hear sounds for people who cannot see. And it's the time they can pass. There are parking spaces for the wheelchair users. But coming from facilities with persons with psychosocial disabilities and mentally ill patients, it leaves less to desire. And hopefully, as we're having some interactions recently with the Namibian Standard Institution, they can go and revisit the standards to bring them to the standard that all of us desire. We also have touch access to information, because participation starts with the individual. And we are very much glad of the smart devices for the visionary impaired. They can operate them, the tablets, whatever we have. And they can access information. It's only internet connection in the rural areas that needs to be improved. And we hope and we believe that the libraries all over the country will be equipped with a Wi-Fi connection, because education is the key. And when we are there, I'm a thinker, I'm not an expert.
Good.
This segregation that we have of special schools, resource schools, and so forth, I was thinking those schools also to be integrated into the formal education. Their classrooms can be there, and teachers to be trained Braille and sign languages, going even to the police officers and nurses, so that they can communicate with all the people. Because information is part and parcel of communication. We are also going to employment. Employers are employing employers because of the rating from the Namibian Disability Council. Or you have at least that percentage of disabled people in your company. It must not be like that. It must be based on the ability of the person. And a disabled person must not be judged in, in its workplace. Just guide the blind person to the kitchen, for example. Communicate with him while he or she is preparing his own coffee. She can do it, or he can do it himself and drink his coffee. Even if he go to the printer in a wheelchair. Maybe most of the time it's not even important for the person to go and collect the papers from the printer. But since the person wants also mobility, is doing that. But it could be better if you can assist. Maybe the papers are falling from the lab, just pick it up for the person to come comfortably back to the desk. But people are making fun of the disabled people in the workplace. But due to the fact that with disability, we retain our dignity, and we face the mockers and the gossipers. We don't have time for that. Medical board is also an unfair entity. They must think twice before they send an employee home due to voting the people based on ill health. I think maybe that's the contribution factor of this escalating rate of suicide in this country. Because a person who is getting an income based on a disability must go home to face unemployment. Maybe there's a department that the person can prove his worth there in the same. So the doctors are so discriminatory when it comes also to this voting. Both people can have one eye, but one will receive the disability grant and the other one will not receive the disability grant. And we are wondering, what criteria is that? Eye is lost, arm is lost, legs are lost, disabled. If you are not saying is disabled, say the person is not disabled. If you say the person is disabled, just say it is disabled, finish. We'll understand. We know how to cope. But don't make a discrimination, just give the grant for both of them. But to participate, volunteerism, to volunteer is the best way to reach your full potential. At an institution that will take out the best of you. Like me, since I lost job in 2010 and do some contract work with the Ministry of Education, Directorate of Adult Education, up to 2015. From 2016, I'm a volunteer at the association. And through that volunteerism, you are really gaining back yourself. And the best friend in this world is yourself.
You have actually given quite a lot of relevant challenges that is facing, or the people with disabilities are faced with. You as an association, what have you done? You have also pointed out issues and you have given solutions. So you as an association, what have you done further to actually make sure that the authorities, or for example, the ministry and other associations and federations are aware of what is happening and all these issues are eliminated?
Thanks for the question. As an association, we are only commemorating our Mental Health Day on the 10th of October, where we are raising our awareness to the public that mental health is a very good thing. You are healthy in the mind. So make sure that you keep it healthy that way, so that it cannot get sick one day. So we are having keynote speakers. It was celebrated this year on the 13th of October at Santi. And the keynote speaker was the Deputy Minister of Health. And we also held a sports day on the 29th November here at Augustinium. And we invited our Deputy Minister of Health. Even the renowned artist Dinaf was there, giving practical feelings, how they went through this during the COVID-19 as artists, how it has affected their mental health. So we are bringing people together like that so that we can share awareness and raise it.
Thank you so much. It's 1:30. We are now inviting you to be part of the discussion. The number to dial is 061-400-397. The number 061-400-397. Please call us up and post your question or give a suggestion. And also you can go to our Facebook page, MICT, or our YouTube channel where this is live streamed. And you can post your questions there, or you can dial the number in the studio. We continue with our discussion while we are waiting for your calls. Let's move on to another issue, the main issue actually in the country recently, and it has been a big issue, that is gender-based violence, and people with disabilities are said to be twice likely to be victimized. Are police stations equipped with policing officials equipped with actually policing officials who actually understand, or with a deeper understanding of how to deal with cases involving people with disabilities? I would like to start with Ms. Mutenda.
Okay, thank you. I would say capital N-O, no. When it comes to people with disabilities, especially visually impaired people and the hearing impaired, you need to understand them. You need to be able to communicate with them. Like, for example, a person with hearing impairment visiting a police station reporting a case, it is always a challenge for police officers to communicate with hearing impaired people. And with the meetings that I have attended, I've come to realize that all police officers, if there are some who can sign or speak sign language, maybe there are only 5 or so, but majority of them cannot communicate with people with a hearing impairment. And it's always a problem because sometimes information is misinterpreted, and in most cases these people would go back home without receiving any help. And when it comes to visually impaired people, if a person with visual impairment has to report or lay charges against the perpetrator, when it comes to writing a report, police officers at times write a report without reading the report to the victim.
Back to the,
Yeah, so it's very important that the person has to know what the officer has written, because you'll find that sometimes when the person gets to court, there's a big difference between what the person reported and what was written. So in other words, the police officers should be trained so that they will understand the process to follow all the criteria when they are attending to people with visual impairment or hearing impairment. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Vaisako, I would like to pose the same question to you. Are the police stations equipped with policing officials who actually have a deep understanding of how to deal with cases involving people with disabilities?
No, I just concur, especially when it comes to people with mental illnesses and psychosocial disabilities. Because we are still subjected to that Mental Health Act 18 of 1973. It's just the same like torture, that act also. Supposed to be revisited. That's why I'm thinking there must be a mental health conference also from the Ministry of Health. Because we are just manhandled. The relative will only report this person is having a mental health issue and he's problematic here. Then the second moment you'll see the police come and just arrest you, and there's no charges. You'll only be taken to the nearest district hospital, and from there you will be observed for 72 hours, which also bring confusion to those inpatients who are already admitted. And after that, if you are not recovering, you will be taken to the mental hospital and discharged after 2 weeks or so. And if nothing is still happening, especially if your mind used to be intoxicated with substance abuse and alcohol abuse, you will be taken also from there. But it's the police officers who brought you there. From there to Okongwari Rehabilitation Center or at Emengano.
Without any charges or
no
your rights
charges.
being explained to
No
you?
No rights explained. No nothing.
That's quite tricky, okay.
So we are just like treated like underdogs and like persons without any dignity. Some of us are married fathers, and disputes and arguments, they happen, it's human nature, but some people will be offended of what you are saying, and you will be taken there. Otherwise, those are adherent patients. We have the non-adherent patients. They will do their things on the streets, working half naked, with smelly body odor, but the children will mock them, throw them with stones, but the people are doing nothing to them. They will just go maybe to a nearest dustbin, scratch for something there. I don't know whether they're even eating because they just put it in the plastic bags and carry them around because they know where to go and find food. They will go to a service station and back there and get a food and eat, or do even a shopping mall there and get something that they can eat. But they know already that if they go to a dustbin, that is not good for them.
Okay. Does your association also give help to these people in the streets who, as you explained, are living as such?
As I have said before, we start with ourselves first. Yeah. And we have started with a support group, and just based here in Windhoek. But it's not well advertised or marketed. So at this juncture, I will make a request to the public out there to get hold of me personally so that we can expand it. Yeah. And make use of that platform and raise awareness that it's just an illness and we can recover.
It can get better,
and
yes.
Contribute meaningfully to the economy of our country.
Okay, thank you so much. Ms. Kufuna, quite so much have been said. Let's first look at how the police stations are functioning when it comes to helping and having a deeper understanding of helping people living with disabilities. And then we can maybe zoom in also and to what Mr. Baisako has given, so many issues, and probably if the ministry has solutions to that.
No, I think there's two speakers with me have shared a reality, and those are real issues. I think a year ago, there was even something circulating on social media where a person with disability, because of not communicating, it really got very out of hand. But what I can advise is that if there is complaints, we are represented in all the 14 regions. So any family member, any parent can approach our office. And based on that, I think we will take up the issue with the respective, because like they said, a lot of issues is about sensitization for persons to understand that we need to provide, there is a term we say reasonable accommodation. With any type of disability is different. And for, like she said, I have a dream where one day we may not have a sign language interpreter at every police station, but we can call someone at any point to say there is a client here. And I also urge the police stations, if there's someone facing, they should ask the family member as to how to go about.
Yeah.
So that the person is, like she said, is able to express themselves. What I also realize is that with people with hearing impairment, it's not only about sometimes sign language.
Yeah.
If you don't understand, if the person has gone to school, ask them to write for you,
yeah.
so that you clearly understand. But then, like they said, sometimes what is funny is that Mr. Mbaisako is here, comes with somebody. I would want somebody to speak on behalf of Mr. Mbaisako, but Mr. Mbaisako can talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to acknowledge. So even if they come to the police station, the focus should not be on who escorted. If it's an adult, they need to be treated. I think for police officers, because we are all faced with a challenge that in most of our facilities we don't have sign language, they should be able to find out, can you communicate through writing? And the person can be able to tell them that this is what has transpired, so that they represent themselves and not a family member, unless that cannot be cannot be an option. Yes.
Thank you. Just a reminder to our viewers and listeners that you can still call us in the studio at the number 061-400-397. Give us your questions, your suggestions, or you can post on our Facebook page or go to our YouTube channel and be part of our discussion. And while we're waiting for you, we'll continue with our discussion. Now, Ms. Kufuna, again, let's just give clarity on how we can make or we can protect people living with disabilities, because already Mr. Mbaisako has mentioned that they feel like they are being, or they are feeling like they are underdogs. Let's give them that hope and give them what protection is there for them and where they can go.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think it's a very genuine question, and all I can say is I like to use the word, collective. Government has put already policies. We have got acts. Majority of them is to protect, some of them to create access for persons with disability. We need to move beyond, and I think understanding that disability is a cross-cutting issue. When it's cross-cutting, it means government alone, neither the Ministry of Gender will be able to uplift issues that affect persons with disability. And when I mean that, if you go to an individual with disability, their needs are beyond the Ministry of Gender. Its education has to come on board, health, access to justice, which is what we are discussing, is critical.
Yeah.
Because if I go to court, or I go to a police station, or I go and seek family planning, I need to do it freely, without being judged, without not being able to communicate. But I would like to assure, to say it's work in progress. And I think collectively as a ministry, we have developed a disability mainstreaming plan. And that plan, it's there for us to accelerate. It has specific themes that will help us to track change. One of it being education. In the same, we've got employment, and we've got access to health, which is rehabilitation and habitation. So those are quite critical.
Yeah.
But we have also gone beyond to say we're no more speaking when we come to disability as one sector, because through the United Nations Partnership on the Rights of Persons with Disability, which Namibia benefited from, and ended this year as a project in 2022 in March, we managed to establish the National Disability Forum. The Disability Forum is a stakeholder that comprises of government entities, few of the private sector. We still need to bring more the private sector. Even academia, the institution like the IUM, the University of Namibia are well represented. And we also have organization and service providers for persons with disability are also quite key. So in that platform is to address issues that persons with disability face and find solutions collectively as a forum and move forward so that we are able to address with institutions. We also, in that platform, what we do, because information is key, invite ministries to share information or a private sector on what is it that benefits persons with disability. Because when we talk about mainstreaming, we do not want something separate for persons with disability. We want what is provided to everybody to just be inclusive. And
yes,
as Mr. Mbaisako said, it must just be inclusive and accommodative. So that, like I say, we do not say make a room for a person with disability to access family planning. No, that's not what we are saying.
It should go where others are going.
Yeah, we're just saying, let me walk in the same room, but if I cannot communicate, find a sign language interpreter.
Yeah.
Or let me write for you if that's what is readily available for you to say. Also, give me the correct attitude, because a lot of what is happening is sometimes we have our own attitudes to deal with, not persons with disability. And sometimes when we interact, there are many who say, I did not think that's possible.
Yeah.
You see? So it's where we should, I think we should be diverse. We should appreciate. When we see a person with disability, let's look at the ability and not the disability.
Yeah,
and
indeed.
we'll be able to appreciate.
Indeed. There was a suggestion from our YouTube channel from Hans Kamwi. I think you just answered to that one. Why can't the government come up with projects for people with disabilities so that they can be self-employed? I think you just gave an answer to say they also want to be where everybody else is. Why should they be segregated? Yes. Ms. Mutenda.
However, maybe to respond to him,
yes,
within what we give, we should have a target.
Okay.
This is what we want to see. If, for example, you are saying I'm giving startup capital to 10 persons, take a certain proportion and be very clear that this is for persons with disability, but the same for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Ms. Mutenda, what have you done as an organization to debunk the myths on or prejudices and stereotypes against people with disabilities looking at the daily happenings?
Thank you, okay. The Namibian Federation of the Visually Impaired has three projects under it, which are focusing on. Each project has its own mandate. I'll start with the rehabilitation project, which is responsible with the rehabilitation of visually impaired persons, and I think from 16 up to 55, yeah. And these people are rehabilitated for them to go back to society. For example, if someone happened to lose their sight while they are working, they are sent to the Namibian Federation for rehabilitation. And in this rehabilitation process, they are taught how to use a white cane, that stick that visually impaired people walk with, and braille activities of daily living, just to enable them to be able to clean, to dress neatly, just like their peers, even to comb their hair. Yeah, so this is one of the initiatives to change the mindset of people. Because before the person is rehabilitated, in most cases, they have this low esteem and negative perception towards themselves. They always feel that no one loves them, they are incapable, unproductive. But after this rehabilitation, they tend to go back to their work, and some continue with their studies. I'm actually one of the beneficiaries of the Federation. I was also rehabilitated and continued with my studies, and got employed. So, and when it comes to we also have the Human Rights Project, which I'm personally managing. This project's objective is to train stakeholders on the rights of visually impaired people. And these stakeholders include all government entities or institutions, the private sector, including business people and NGOs. And also families of visually impaired people and visually impaired people themselves. The reason why human rights is training all these stakeholders, I forgot decision makers, is to change the mindset of people. Because in Namibia, there is this myth that a disabled person is not capable. Now, when we train stakeholders, for example, the decision makers, we sensitize them on the capabilities of visually impaired people. We go to an extent of training visually impaired people just to make them aware of the legal frameworks like the UNCRPD, for them to know that there are tools which are protecting them. And whenever they find themselves in a certain situation, they must know where to go, what to do. Yeah, those, and the families of visually impaired persons are also trained, because majority of families of visually impaired people choose to lock the
people in the houses.
Yeah, in the houses. You'll find that there are some children who are getting the social grant, even the adults with visual impairments. But then these people are not benefiting from their grant simply because their family members are using this grant to pay for able-bodied relatives.
Thank you very much for sharing that. That's quite a mouthful. We have a few minutes left, I think 3 minutes or so. Ms. Kufuna, let's look at the day, the objectives of the day, also looking at the theme, transformative solutions for inclusive development, the role of innovation in fueling an accessible and equitable world. Let's look at the objective, and then we zoom in a little bit on the theme.
Yeah, I think the objective is to normally raise awareness, and the awareness is more on this day for everybody to recognize their abilities and what persons with disability can bring on the table. Now, in relation to the theme is recognizing the fact that without innovation, persons with disability will be left behind. And for us, I think we touch on the theme as we spoke about robots, about the lift.
Exactly,
that's innovation. Because with technology, a lot of barriers for certain types of disability are being moved away. But then we have to create that space, we have to create that technology. And I think a lot of us also to check our websites accessible. So with innovation, it will become easy to communicate to persons with disability. So with innovation, it will become easy for the issue of accessibility that we opened here. We are all quite passionate about it, infrastructure, whatever. All that is innovation. But like he said, innovation will either come from persons with disability or will come from those that are entrusted to serve persons with disability.
Yeah.
So when that comes, I think we need to embrace. And I think we all are moving into technology. And I think that why this theme is very important. It also even talks about employment as a sub-theme, meaning that there are now innovative ways for you to create employment for persons with disability.
Finally, are there activities lined up for the day?
Yes. There is no main commemoration on Saturday, which is the 3rd.
Yeah.
But however, on the 7th of December, which is next week, Wednesday, there will be a breakfast meeting for employers, which is aligned to the sub-theme on employment. That breakfast aims to bring together persons with disability and employers, which are companies and ministry, together in one room and talk about issues. But the narrative will be very positive in terms of addressing employment, but at the same time, not withholding the fact that we need to talk about the challenges in order for us to address. So if there are individuals with disability who would want to attend, they are free to contact me. I think we have some of the few platforms. They can reach myself. Yeah, and then we can facilitate that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Messi Kahimbi Kufuna, Deputy Director, Disability Affairs, Ministry of Gender Equality, Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare, Mr. Dion Baisako, Secretary General, Namibian Mental Health Association, and Ms. Mwaka Mutenda. She's a Human Rights Project Manager, Namibian Federation of the Visually Impaired. Thank you very much to everybody who have listened and tuned in to be part of our discussion or follow our discussion. From myself, Asteria and Jenja, and the rest of the production crew, thank you so much for your contribution and thank you for watching. Goodbye.